Are we recording? Excellent, excellent. Let's get started. Welcome to the first time I'm ever presenting this panel. It's a world premiere. Playing an MMO. Woo! Thank you. Playing an MMO for the story, community, lore, and roleplay in Final Fantasy XIV. I am Remix Sakura, and my qualifications for making this panel are that I have been, for the past over a year, the co-host of a podcast called MuseCast 14. And we are the only podcast in the realm of Final Fantasy XIV that focuses exclusively on roleplay. The panel will touch on roleplay in some aspects, but I really wanted to give more of an overarching view of what the community is like, kind of the emotional impact and the sort of the daily life and social issues that come with being an MMO player. Because it's really quite fascinating how much a game can transform someone's life. And MMOs especially are the kind of games that they tend to become your life. You'll stick with them for years and years and decades in some cases. And I'm interested in the reasons why that happens, why people become so committed to the game, why they have an emotional relationship with them. So, first of all, I would ask of the audience, how many of you play video games? All right.
Mostly all of us.
How many of you play Final Fantasy games?
Yeah, dabble.
How many of you play Final Fantasy XIV? How many of you played Final Fantasy XI? How many of you have ever played another MMORPG?
Yeah.
All right, so good. So, before we start, is anybody not familiar with Final Fantasy XIV and would like an overview? That guy. Two people. Okay, Final Fantasy XIV is an MMORPG in the Final Fantasy franchise, which has been going on for like 30. It's their 30th anniversary. It's one of the most prolific JRPG franchises. Yes.
The one thing I noticed that didn't it blow up? Is that true?
Yeah, Final Fantasy XIV's first release was an abject failure. They completely scrapped the game and relaunched it about 2.5, 3 years later as version 2.0. And that was about 4 years ago. But since then, it's been a rousing success. And I've been playing for not quite 4 years, but maybe like 3.5, so almost the whole life of the game, of 2.0 anyway. And I don't know, everyone in the popular consciousness, when people think of MMOs, they all think of like the Warcraft kind of thing. But Final Fantasy, and FF14, they have more of the Japanese art style. Yeah, you can play as elves, but you can also play as chibis and cat girls and cat boys. And now lizard people, so it's got that fantasy element, but there's also elements of sci-fi and technology, and there's like really a little something for everybody, and that's one of the reasons why it's a really fascinating world for roleplay. Now again, I'm pretty much doing this panel off the top of my head. I didn't write any slides or anything like that, so it's going to be very, very interactive, so please come at me with questions. And we'll see how it evolves along the way. I also want to tailor it to the audience specifically. Raise your hand again if you are a Final Fantasy XIV player. So most people in the room, right?
Yeah.
I would like to go around the room and maybe if you could, what kind of player are you? Are you a casual? Are you hardcore? Are you into raiding? And are you into roleplay? And are you into lore? And how much of your social life revolves around the game? Anybody?
I'm like a mix between like everything, except for like crafting and gathering. I kind of got into like recently, but yeah, like I mix everything. Like I like hardcore gaming, savage content. I haven't really argued too much, but like I have a lot of work with my characters and stuff like that. Story was what taught me into getting in the game in the first place.
Awesome. Anybody else? Want to share what kind of player they are?
I just go hardcore and just raiding and stuff. I don't really care about I like lore. I really care about the RP aspect more of that.
Yeah, interesting. I personally, I'll tell you a funny story. I came into Final Fantasy XIV never having been playing an MMO ever. And the reasons why I started playing the game were three. One was that I had some friends who were playing. And they said it was good. 2.0 had released and it had been out for a couple months. And it seemed to be, going much better than last time. And I knew it was a Final Fantasy game. And I played most of the other previous Final Fantasy games. So I was going into this game not as, oh, it's an MMO, it's got such and such content, it's got such and such jobs, but oh, it's Final Fantasy, so it's going to be all about the story, right? So from the beginning, I have been one of those people that's really all about the story. And actually, one of the guests on our podcast really put it well. He says, like, some people are in it for the story, some people are in it for the RP, and some people are in it for, quote, playing the video game. And to me, you know, just as a longtime RPG player, the games have always been about experiencing a story, experiencing characters, and yeah, there's some fighting attached to it. Because that's the way single player games are. That's the way, you know, old school, you know, RPGs and the PlayStation non-online games are. And that's what I was used to. When I jumped into this, I made a lot of really like stupid noomish mistakes because I just didn't know what an MMO was, and I didn't really understand them. Even though I had friends to help me out, I didn't really understand a lot of really basics to an embarrassing level that I'm like embarrassed to repeat now. But it's funny to me looking back how I was able to enjoy the game and really get into it, even though I didn't experience any, like hardly any of what people might call like playing the video game. I didn't really understand dungeons. I definitely didn't understand raiding. And all I knew is, yeah, that there's this level cap of level 50. I'm gonna level up my white mage. And, you know, when, and what was funny is that not being an MMO person, I didn't really understand this concept of end game at all. And when people tried to explain it to me, because when you beat, you know, a single player RPG, you get to level 99, you beat the last boss, and that's like it, right? It's just kind of over. So it was really hard, even though my friends were like pushing me, like, hey, you got to level 50, you gotta do this and that. I didn't really understand the appeal of like, well, why would I want to do these things? Because in my mind, once you get to the level cap, it's like the game is over. So why would I rush? Why want to take it slow? I want to do all the side quests. I actually started a second character way too early, which is an awful idea. Awful idea. I did like everything wrong in the beginning. And my friends would try to explain to me these things, like, yeah, what do you do in the end game? And it's like, well, you do raids, you do dungeons, and then you grind for mythology. And I'm like, mythology? What's that? Oh, it's like a tombstone, you know, elegant tombstone of the mythology. Of course, this was like in 2013, so it's mythology. and they're like, yeah, and then you've got to get your item level up, and then you can do more stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't sound like you're having a lot of fun, like grinding for these tombstones. Why do I want to do that? Like, it doesn't sound that appealing to me. You know, and of course, you know, I never experienced anything like an MMO before, so I basically had no idea what they were talking about. So that whole perspective of how I came in, and it took me like maybe over a year to really figure out kind of, oh, okay, you're supposed to get better gear, and then, you know, this and that, and oh, you're not supposed to start 2 different characters, you're supposed to finish one first. You're supposed to finish one job first, and then you gotta focus on gearing that up. I didn't understand any of these things, like at all. But somehow, even though I didn't do any of that stuff that people normally do, I got super into the game. I was very attached to it, you know, also the social aspect. And I actually went to the 2014 Fan Fest, because I'm so into the game, despite never having, like, done a raid. Now, most people might find that funny, because they're like, well, raiding is like the only thing you play this for. So what the hell was I doing for a year that actually got me, like, so attached to it? Well, it was about the story. Like it has always been with Final Fantasy. And actually, even though playing 2 characters was in retrospect a bad idea, it gave me a lot of ways to like reflect on the story. And I will say that like the story of A Realm Reborn definitely drags on at the beginning. And it took me like a very long time to really become the kind of really into it the way I am today. I always say that it was like the end of 2.55 and all of the like everything like going to hell and like blowing up in your face. I didn't really care about the story until then because it was actually so painful for me that I cared about everybody. I cared about all the characters that were like dying or like being imprisoned and made and stuff. And you're like, oh god, this is terrible. Oh god. But like before that moment, I felt like I hadn't actually cared about the characters like on the way that I did with previous Final Fantasy games. It was a brand new experience. So there really is different reasons why people log in every day, why they log in every day, and why they stick with it for years. And that's why I'm interested in kind of like what everybody else's perspectives are. Yes?
So did you do the turns, like the Savage version of the turns?
No.
do the normal ones?
Yeah, normal I did.
Okay.
Like, eventually. Eventually I understood, oh, rating, that's a thing it's supposed to do. You know?
Because I mean, I never got to do that, so it always just seemed like the game was better then because there was story that was optional but linked to battles that were actually difficult. So like you would earn the ending just like you would in a single player game. And I was just wondering if you see that now in Stormfront.
All of the raid quest lines, it's really good that they have the normal version and the savage version, because there's really no difference between the two. You get all the story by doing the normal version, and the normal versions have a pretty, you know, a skill cap that the average player can pass. And they also last for a while. Like right now we're in 4.0, and if you haven't finished Omega, like there's still time until the next installment. If you do actually have trouble with it, or if you just need time to practice or get better gear. But yeah, I mean, they're like the Binding Coil of Bahamut. People still believe that that is like the best raid storyline. Like nothing yet has like even come close to surpassing it. But one of the reasons behind that was because it was so connected to the 1.0 story and the Calamity. So it's hard to get another storyline that's going to have that kind of emotional weight, because the whole Calamity and Bahamut is like the whole basis for the whole story. So it's hard to say if we'll ever really top that. But I do like the fact that you have to, some story is gated behind content, and that's good because it encourages you to do it. Yes?
If you're new to the game, like, because I haven't played it, but I couldn't play 1.0 at this point. You have to go to whatever the.
It doesn't exist. It was completely shut down.
So like basically you just have to get on to whatever the storyline is now. Like you watch the previous one.
Yeah, it's like one of them.
Yeah, just watch
The world kind of blew up.
Wait,
Yeah.
the world blew up?
In the most literal sense.
Oh yeah. If you want to learn the story of 1.0, there's many online resources. Sorry? A lot of people are talking at once.
Wait, do you actually want to?
Yeah, no, just go ahead.
Well, I actually got a question. I mean, I heard in like MMOs there are like role plays and such. Like, how does a role play work? Like, do you just start out as like a character? Do you like dog or what? I don't know what like actually a role play is in an MMO. Like, what is that?
Sure. I was going to go into this a little bit later, but I'll touch on it because obviously that's my one area of expertise.
Oh.
Most roleplay, when you are playing an MMO, you are literally playing an avatar. You are playing an original character that you have to create yourself.
Oh.
There is no stock character. There is no default character. You have to create it yourself. So the vast majority of roleplay centers around people taking that Warrior of Light character. In this case, everyone, the main character is the Warrior of Light, is you, and giving them a personality beyond what the main scenario, what the actual quest lines will tell you, because you're still pretty much a silent protagonist. You kind of go along with what everybody says, for the sake of plot. But other than that, they don't really give that main character a personality. Other than that, like you're a nice person that's really always willing to help and save the world. Because you need to be to advance the plot. But who were you before you started on this adventure?
Oh.
What do you do outside of killing monsters and demigods and primals and evil empires? That kind of thing. There's currently 6 different races where you can play. All of them originate in different parts of the planet, so you got to think, where was this character born? Where did they grow up? What is their personality? Are they actually maybe not so much of a nice person as the other characters would lead you to believe? Are they secretly, kind of a dick?
Yeah.
And that's all the roleplay is, and you can interact both in game. Just literally being that avatar and using the various text chat functions. There are many in an MMO, private, public, and all that. Or you can even take that same character, take a screenshot, take a picture, and make a Tumblr page. Or go into a chat program like Skype or Discord. Discord's very, very popular in this community. And just do like a one-on-one chat. There are many, many different options. But most of it's around original characters. Some people, such as myself, also do roleplay around the characters in the story, aka NPCs. It's just funny because in an anime or something, most people end up playing the characters in the story because there is no original character, there is no avatar of you. But it's weird how like in a game somehow that's a little bit stranger. So there are some people, like I really enjoy doing NPC roleplay and talking to other NPC roleplayers, you know, basically role-playing the characters in the story. But a lot of people actually dislike it or even hostile to it because they feel like, okay, I'm an original character, and if you are an NPC, like, it ruins my immersion because you are in a place where the story says you're not actually supposed to be. For example, like one of the characters I play is like the leader of a city-state, and you know she probably spends most of her time like locked in her office doing paperwork. So if she's just kind of walking around the city, like having fun, that's not supposed to happen. And even though I'm just having fun, like maybe talking to people and just like messing around with people, to them it seems like I'm breaking the lore. I'm rooting their immersion because I'm doing something that isn't quote unquote supposed to happen. So you know, obviously I don't have this extreme view. I don't want to tell anyone how to roleplay or who to roleplay, because if you like a character, if you really want to build on an existing character, like you should do that. You know, I mean, there are lots of great. I mean, this is a huge game with like an enormous cast of characters. Like, you're going to get attached to one of them, maybe two, maybe five, you know, and it's going to happen. So that's another option for roleplay. But that you then, in that case, you're basically taking not an original character, but a character that exists. So you have to consider their life circumstances, what kind of place they have in society, what sort of abilities they have, if any. You know, are they a fighter? Are they not a fighter? Are they a politician? Are they a crafter? Or whatever. You know, those are the options. But for the actual mechanics of roleplay, obviously it's an MMO. There's a lot of text chat options. You just use text chat. Yes.
So for this scenario that you're running, would this happen in game or would this happen in text, or is there like a server that you like have picked out for those sort of campaigns?
As far as roleplay servers, yeah, obviously it's an MMO. There's different servers, different data centers. And as far as where roleplay happens, roleplay can happen everywhere and does happen everywhere on every server. I don't know how many servers there are. There's probably, I feel like there's about 40. Some of them are explicitly like Japan-based, like their data centers are in Japan. There's 3 data centers for Japan, 2 for North America, and 1 for Europe. So for the most part, if you go to a Japanese server, you'll find Japanese-speaking players. That's not exclusively true. For example, if you live in Australia, you're probably going to play on a Japanese server because your thing is better. You know, it's in the Asia zone. But and there's, you know, and for example, what is currently the largest roleplay server in the game is on a North American data center. And a lot of people have flocked there from Japan, from Europe, from all over the world, from South America, from the Middle East, from everywhere. Even though there are not data centers for those regions, you know, if you can connect to the game, somehow you can connect to the game. A lot of people connect through Steam. You know, so we do have players from all over the world. But for example, people from all over the world will flock to what is known as the roleplay server because they just want to have more options for roleplay, for example. Yes?
How is roleplay in Final Fantasy XIV different from roleplay in other MMOs?
It's not. It's just that the world is different and the lore is different. You know, there's different contexts, there's different rules for how magic works, for how politics work, for what the history is and the backstory. So that, you know, it's just a different world.
I just meant like different in the communities and stuff like that.
I've never, like I said, I've never played any other MMO, so I can't say. Sorry?
Oh, I thought you said we needed that. This was your first one. I thought that meant like you had done others after this.
No.
Okay.
No, I've been just playing mostly this for the past 4 years. Yes?
Just out of curiosity, because you do roleplay, so you are on Valorant, I'm assuming?
No.
Oh, you are?
Okay, so the server that I was talking about that is known as the roleplay server is called Balmont.
Oh.
It is absolutely a big central hub for roleplay, but actually one of the biggest missions that we've taken at MuseCast is to decentralize roleplay. Because my host and I, we play on the Gilgamesh server, which is the second largest North American server. Fallen is the largest. And we have both been there for like the entire life of our characters, and we never wanted to move to Balmont. For various reasons. Like I have a house, and it's very difficult to get a house.
Yeah.
You know, my co-host, we have a lot of friends, we have social lives on this server, and neither of us were role players when we started the game. what's kind of ironic is that the Balmung server and the Gilgamesh server, because they were so popular, actually now don't accept new characters or new transfers. So if you were to go home today and say, I want to get into roleplay, I heard that there's a lot of roleplay in Balmung, you can't go to Balmung. There's no way. They may change this policy in the future, but just from a technology perspective, like the data centers cannot handle the massive amounts of players. Balmung and Gilgamesh are also both on the same data center, which makes this like data center like way overloaded from like a DevOps perspective. So it makes perfect sense that they would stop transfers. They have to just stabilize these populations. But it really has pissed a lot of people off that people can no longer flock to the roleplay hub. But on the other hand, my host and I have felt for a long time that having one roleplay hub was not a good thing. So that's why I want to say that roleplay can happen anywhere and does happen everywhere. Now, as someone who's not into roleplay, probably all that you've heard at a cursory glance is that there's roleplay in Balmung. That's why you assume I'm on Balmung, because it's like these things are like, they're like peanut butter and jelly. They go together, and that's not wrong. I'm not saying that you're like wrong for
I only
thinking
say that because I'm on Balmung,
yeah,
and I just noticed all the RP going on, so I just assumed.
Yeah, I mean it's a good guess. But in this case, you would be wrong, and I'm hoping that in the future, people have more options. Because for one thing, you can't get onto Balmung now, but it doesn't mean you can't RP, not at all, not even a little, because you have the same technology functions. You still have the character creator, you still have text chat, you still have places in the world where you can go, to interact with others. There's nothing physically stopping you other than that there are fewer people to roleplay with. Obviously, it's a collaborative activity. You can't roleplay by yourself. That's just fan fiction. Yes?
How social is the community there? Because, like in some MMOs, you can't go 5 steps without getting to someone you can go hours without. Like, what's your experience? Is it,
I mean, my experience is very positive in that it's extremely social. Are people coming up to random strangers and starting conversations? I don't know. I don't think so. But, FFXIV has guilds. They're called free companies, but it's the same thing as anywhere else. It's a guild. You make friends with those people. There's also another function, a link shell, which is a way to connect anybody, no matter what guild they're in some kind of ad hoc group, usually based on a certain interest. Like, for example, there are dozens and dozens of link shells just for roleplay. This is the channel where people are going to talk in character or invite others to a roleplay event that's going on. There could be a link shell for crafters and gatherers. There's a link shell that's just for housing decoration. So there are many, many ways to socialize. But I don't know that socializing happens out in the open world, like going up to a stranger on the street. But it's been said many, many times that FF14 is one of the friendliest and nicest communities of any MMO. People are very understanding and patient for newbies, and I find that that's the case, and that I've been very lucky. Even though I don't have anything to compare with it, that we are pretty nice and welcoming. And of course, it varies a little bit by server, and for them, and there are only a couple of servers that really have that are really known for anything. Balmung being known for roleplay, Gilgamesh being known for raiding. But when I started the game, I wasn't into roleplay at that time. So I came onto Gilgamesh because that's where my friends were. It's not like I made this conscious choice, like, oh, I'm going to go to the raiding server. I just went where my friends were. And that's what I feel like 90% of people are going to do when they join the game. They're going to go where their friends are. And if they want to get into roleplay at that time or later, they should all be able to do so, no matter which of the 40, 50 servers that they end up on. They should be able to roleplay. So we make a lot of efforts for not only decentralizing roleplay and supporting roleplay communities on other servers, on Gilgamesh, on Lich, on Animan Toys, and Diablos and things like that. All these little worlds, there's no reason why, maybe those RP communities are going to be smaller, but they can still be vibrant and satisfying. And if they're not, maybe you just RP out of game, because not everyone wants the big server experience. That's the other thing. It's like, you can be as into roleplay as you want to be, but Balmung is a gigantic server. It's gigantic. You will lag just entering a public area because there's so many people. It's a serious technology issue. I talked to a lot of people that left Balmung because they lagged too much. They physically could not play there, especially Europeans. And and then I go and hear other people's opinions saying, well, we have to have everybody on Balmung. We have to have everybody on the same RP server. And I'm like, that's not physically possible. That is just not possible. Square Enix is never going to devote extra resources into supporting one massively inflated player population. No MMO does that. No game company does that. It's not going to happen. Decentralization of roleplay communities is really the only option, and we have known this for so long, but it really took Balmung being locked for us to get other people on board with this idea. You know? So we were kind of like prepared for it.
Well, I only ask because I play a lot of the Old Republic, and you can go hours in that game, and even if you're in a roleplay server, just dead silence.
You mean nobody's saying anything, or there's nobody?
Well, people are playing, just everyone just walks by each other. Like nothing's happening. No one groups together, no one does anything. It's one of the most anti-social.
Well, how do they connect? How do you find like other people to play with? Are there like ways of finding?
Mostly people. It's sad, but like literally only what times people interact. It's a weird design flaw, not flaw, but issue is because the Old Rogue is actually such a good single player game that no one plays multiplayer. And so the only time anyone ever gets together in the group is when it's like a big quest that requires more than one person because it's way too difficult.
Yeah. Someone in the back?
So I was just wondering if you caught wind of any groups of role players that have petitioned Yoshi P to support their stories to be added to the main story.
I've never heard of that. That's really dumb.
Just making sure.
And if I find them, I will tell them that's really dumb. So actually, one thing that I wanted to go over, and roleplay was brought up before I actually brought it up, but there's a really interesting phenomenon that I've seen in these communities, and I wanted to go around the room and see where people lie, because I almost feel like, yeah, we're a very inclusive, for the most part, very friendly community, but there are segmentations. There are definitely going to be people that are really, really into raiding and will form their own communities around that. Especially on the Aether Data Center, which has Gilgamesh and Balmung, two largest servers, but definitely on Primal and Chaos and the Japanese data centers. There's always going to be a raiding community that's focused on that. Another really important community is the lore community. Are the people that, they play the game, they may be casual, they may be hardcore, they may be role players, they may be not, but they're really, really into the story. And the amount of story in this game is absolutely mind-blowing. Really, it's like, first of all, way more than any other previous Final Fantasy game, because there's like hundreds and thousands of side quests. There's so much world building that's been happening since 1.0. Some of it they took into 2.0. I mean, we're now on the third expansion, maybe the fourth if you count 1.0. It's really gigantic. I mean, for example, like the Song of Ice and Fire. It's like an epic fantasy series. They came out with like a world book, right? Like a lore reference book. Last year, FF14 also came out with one that doesn't even contain a third of the full lore content that you can find maybe on the internet. And that's all thanks to a couple of really amazing people in the community that have just taken it upon themselves to be the stewards of lore and take notes, take details, make archives, so that people have a reference for what is true in world that they can use just to explore the story to get more into it, or as reference for roleplay. And I've had the privilege of making some friends with those people, and it's really, really satisfying. And there's a lot of crossover between the lore community and the roleplay community, because obviously the lore people are making archives of details about the world, and the roleplayers are being more creative with the world. They're being more subjective. They're making their own interpretations. They're taking their own spins on it. They're being creative, creating characters, creating storylines, and doing so collaboratively with each other. But, and I mean, it's not surprising, because this isn't, the RP in MMORPG stands for roleplay. And despite this, it's really sad to see, but there's been a lot of negative hostility and even outright bullying of role players in FF14. And I think that's kind of ironic and really quite sad, because it's an RPG. How are you going to shame people for role playing? Now there's a couple of basically what the haters say is any number of things. But usually the big stereotype is that, oh, all RP is sexual. All RP is ERP, or erotic roleplay. And that's really quite unfortunate, and it actually has had some real...
Goldshire.
Huh?
Goldshire.
Goldshire?
It's a World of Warcraft. It's literally in the RP server where you go there and people pretend to have sex. It's disgusting. That's why.
Yeah.
That's how I got the reputation.
I mean, obvious. I don't know anything about WoW, but I don't know anything about WoW, but I don't know. Sorry.
World of Warcraft, the roleplay server.
Yeah.
Goldshire.
I don't want to get off topic.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm saying that's where
No WoW.
that's
No
where
WoW.
roleplay and MMO gets its bad reputation because WoW is so popular.
It's hard to say really, and that's the biggest stereotype that I see. And obviously, if you want to have sex in character, that's fine. Obviously, it shouldn't be done in public. It's a T for teen rated game. Assume that half the people running around there are teenagers and don't do anything that you don't want teenagers to see. But it's had real world repercussions into like bullying, name calling, and one of the reasons why we are not in favor of Balmung being the RP servers because the whole Balmung equals RP thing means that people would just outright bully Balmung people. They would hear you're from Balmung and then they're like, oh, boy, you like to have sex with Lalafell, you like to have sex with cat girls, like stupid things like that. And you're like, no, what are you talking about? I mean, that's really mean. And I mean, this would happen in-game, out-of-game, but it really came to a head when they introduced the feature to play cross-world. Now, before this, and whenever you get into an instance duty, you can be randomly matched with people from all over your data center, which means other servers. Obviously, this makes lines faster. You want to get people mixed in because servers have different kinds of populations. You don't want people on a smaller server to have to wait longer than people on a big server, so everyone in the data center is connected. But they added the feature to explicitly create parties from cross-world, and they also added the feature that you could see where what server the other players were from. Previously, you could not do this. And I live on Gilgamesh. We're known as a rating server, but obviously that's not the only thing you could do. My free company is not really about rating, it's not really about RP, it's just about like people being social and having fun and being friendly and supporting each other. So, and I was never really into rating. I tried it once, I tried it in like second coil, and then I just kind of got sick of people not showing up and like, drama, the same old thing. And I decided it wasn't for me, and I got really busy with the podcast. But so I'm on Gilgamesh, and I will hear about people, making a party, and we have the ability to be connected to Balmung, and yet I would hear about people saying, like, putting up on Party Finder, like, no Balmung people. Like, no Balmung people allowed. Or kicking people from Balmung off their party. Like, that's bullying, that's harassment. And it's also horrible stereotyping, because all you see about this person is their server name, and you don't like them. It's like, and first of all, even if they do ERP, like you're there to do a dungeon or a raid or a boss fight. Why should what they do like matter? Can they play their job? Can they do the mechanics? That's what should matter. But it wasn't. It really turned into this stupid bullying, and it really made me ashamed for a while. That even though I love the server, it's big, it's vibrant, it's got a lot of different people. We have role players on Balmung, we have casuals, we have everybody. These broad stereotypes of servers are really not going to be true for everybody. We just met a guy from Balmung who doesn't role play. So, you can see, and this really made me ashamed, and I didn't understand why this feature that should have been about connecting people was being used for negativity, for bullying. So I want to fight against those things, and sometimes I've had to just go outright and say, look, role players get bullied in this game. It happens. It's a shame that it does, and it needs to stop. And sometimes just going out and saying that it shocks people because they don't even realize it's happening. But it's happened to me. It's happened to many other role players that I've spoken to that have written into our show. So we want to speak up about it. How much time do I have? 8:34. Excellent. So that's kind of what I mean about the segmentation of the community, and I don't know why that is. So hopefully, with the people in this room, we can just begin. Even if it's just the people in this room that gain a better understanding of what it's like on the other side, then I will be glad for that. But it's also a lot of what we do on the show, MuseCast 14. Any other questions? Yes.
Who's the podcast host?
Sorry?
Who's the co-host?
My other co-host is named Emmy.
Interesting.
Her character's name is Scoot Patoo. Yes?
What class and race do you play?
Why me? What does that have to do with it? Why do you want to know about me?
We're just here, yes.
Oh, well, I'm what you call an altaholic, in that I make many alts, and for many different reasons. One of them is for roleplay reasons. If I create a new original character, I will want to make a model of them in game, you know, in Character Creator, and I also am I am in the progress of doing 3 main scenario playthroughs. I know that they have the story jump potion now, and I actively play 4 characters on 4 different servers: Gilgamesh, Balmung, Lich, and Excalibur. And I have my main on Gilgamesh, who's like all caught up, who's doing the end game stuff. My character on Balmung, I used a story jump potion just because that was my 4th playthrough and I was getting a little bit sick of it. But the others, I've literally played through the main scenario from beginning to end and done every side quest because I'm that into the story that's enjoyable for me, and I get different perspectives. Because also, if you're playing through the same story as a different character, and you are in character, you are your roleplay character, you'll have a different viewpoint. You know, one character who's had a different life isn't going to look at the same events in the same way as another has had a different life. Yes?
How do you feel about the branching conversation choices you have in the story?
They have almost no impact. So it's not customization like it is in other games like Fallout. Like they don't have any impact, and they used to really not they used to not have them at all, and it's really ramped up in like subsequent like patches and expansions. But the most it will change is the next line of dialogue slightly, or the next event like slightly. So it's just not that kind of game where you're going to be able to make story-affecting choices. It would change the entire mechanics of everything, and it's just there are many other games if you want to play that style of game. So it's just I don't know. I mean, it's a way of subtly, smallly being in character. I like it because of that, because it does force you to think from your character point of view for even just a moment.
Do you know of any situations where it changed the voice acted line, or?
No. I don't. But even if it were, I mean, the branching is extremely minor. Even if they just stamped it in another voice clip, I mean, that's all it would be. It's just not that type of game. Yes? Not you, the guy behind you.
Yeah, so the only time I can think of where it changed a little bit, but it didn't change the story at all, is if you completed all of Binding Coil, when Heaven's Ward started, Alizé was a little nicer to you. Yeah. That's all it was.
Yeah.
But it didn't change the story, she just like had nicer remarks.
Yeah, there's small things like that.
Objectively, what do you think was the best quest?
Okay, so I kind of want to keep the panel on topic, and I could talk forever about my opinions on things, but I don't feel like it teaches enough stuff. So if we get through all the other questions, we can move on to fluffy filler. I promise. But one point I wanted to make in relation to his question is it's sometimes hard to define the line between being a regular player and a role player. But one thing that I always like to use as an example is, well, how do you know? Are you role playing because you are going through this world? But yeah, as an avatar, someone who isn't you. Usually they have a different name from you. You know, it's unlikely, even if you play a human or like a Here, they're not exactly like you. So some people make characters that are pretty much 100% avatars of themselves. They may name them after an anime character. They may name them after themselves, or just a cooler version of their first name. It may be like a cooler like last name. They wear outfits. They put the character in outfits that they would think were cool. In those kinds of glamours. So definitely there are a lot of people that just have self-insert characters, and they don't really see the character as the same as themselves. What really makes you take the first step, and I would argue that in that sense everybody is role-playing, every single player is role-playing because it's an RPG. Like, let's not fool ourselves, we're all role-playing. But there's a certain mental jump that I think people start to make when they start to think of that in-game avatar as a different person than themselves. Yeah, they're a fictional character, but they're different from you. They're a different person, and sometimes they have different personality. They have different choices. They make different choices. They look at things differently. And this is and you can prove this by the fact that there are many people that roleplay more than one character, more than one original character, more than one NPC character, you know, such as myself. So they can't all be avatars of me. They can't all be clones of me. I have one character that's basically a clone of me and is really not a roleplay character, but all the others, they have personalities that are distinct from me and are distinct from each other. And that's what makes roleplay different, because you start to think of them as a separate entity. And you start to think of what they would do based on their personality that you've built up in your head, and not just what you would do. And so that's the fun line. And a lot of people, there's sort of a continuum, I think, with roleplay. Some people, like, it's not just you're a role player, you're not. Some people are kind of sort of role players. Sometimes they make that mental leap into think of their character as someone else, you know, but other times it's just about self-insert. You know, so there isn't this huge divide, and role players are not fundamentally different than other players. That's another thing that I want people to understand, that role players are not fundamentally different. They're not fundamentally playing the game differently. I know very, very few people that don't play content, that just role play. They do exist, but most people do everything. Most role players are also raiders. They're also playing content. Like, I'm not currently a raider, but like my co-host like raids like 3 times a week and is a role player and like writes things on Tumblr. And you know, I hope that she never gets kicked out of a raid because someone hears that she has a Balmung character because she's a really good tank. You know, and it's like that's the level of silliness that some people think. But you know, I don't want to feel like there's a big difference. Like, we're all kind of one community, and people just have different interests. You know, some more than others. Some people do roleplay occasionally, but not all the time. Some people do it actively, all the time, every day. They're always going to events. They're always talking in character in their link shells. They have active Tumblr profiles. They're in roleplay discords. And some people just do it all in their head, and they never really tell anybody. But their experience is still enhanced by that sort of in-character dynamic. Okay, back to fluffy questions. You've asked a lot of questions, so I want to give other people a chance. Anything about community, anything about lore, anything about roleplay? Yes?
How do you get started?
How do you get started with the game or with roleplay?
With the game.
Oh, you install it, you buy it, you go to Character Creator, you pick a server, and you log in. And
server?
Make sure your internet is connected.
Which server would you prefer if you're actually going to be starting on roleplay?
Okay, that's a tough question, because I said I wish I had memorized the number of servers, but I feel like it's about 30 or 40. I want to say, from a purely idealistic perspective, anywhere.
Oh.
Obviously, you should pick the one that, if you live in North America, you should pick a North America server. You know, it's recommended. But like I said, what is currently the big hub of roleplay is currently closed because it's the most populated server in the game, and the back end cannot handle its population. There have been smaller, since this has happened, this lock has happened, there have been smaller roleplay communities, like they're finally getting their chance to shine. Like, they've always existed, but they're getting their chance to grow and shine. And that's the reason why I really hate to make recommendations, because I don't want there to be a second Balmung. You know what I mean? One place that a lot of people have like made an exodus is the Mateus server. There's definitely a community growing there. For EU, I'm currently on Lich. There's a nice community there. Omega has also grown a lot, but I would say the roleplay communities exist everywhere, but currently Mateus is the thing, or it seems to be shaping up to be the thing. But I really, really hesitate to say that like everyone should flock to one place. That said, I really can't stop you. So if you want to go to Mateus, you can do that. But don't feel like obligated. Don't feel like you cannot roleplay if you pick a different server. I mean, I would say that first and foremost, you should go where your friends are. You know, because who cares? You know, who cares about roleplay and stuff if you have no friends? You know. Yes.
Since you are PLA, how do you feel about the brand new like in-game marriage between characters?
That's not brand new. That's been around for like years, yo.
I played 1.0 and I stopped it.
It's pretty fun. I mean, people will have in-character marriages if they end up having in-character romances, but you'll also have out-of-character marriages, I would say, also, because people want to get them out. People want to get the glamours and the dress. But yeah, it's a lot. I like it because it is an element of immersion that you can make, and it is, you know, all it is a cutscene, really, a bunch of cutscenes that you can't replay. But you can feel nice. You know, I'm married to that guy.
In game and in real life.
Yeah, so it's nice. Yeah, why not?
Speaking of role playing, I don't know what server it is. It might be Gilgamesh. Wasn't there a guild or an FC that created a stage house, like a Broadway theater?
Yes, the Stage Reborn.
Yeah, Stage Reborn, where they host plays on their server?
Yes, the organization is called the Stage Reborn, and they're basically working to bring theatrical productions into FF14. Using housing, using emotes, using basically to create performances. They are not actually role-playing. They're doing theater. They're doing kind of really their own thing. You know, it's not the same as role-play, but it is a really awesome creative endeavor that they're doing, and a way to like expand the world beyond this quote-unquote playing the video game, you know? So I think it's really cool, and they're located on the Diablo server, which is on the Primal Data Center, which is a place where you can create characters freely currently. If you want to watch some of their plays, you can create a character there, but they also stream them. Yes. Okay, so maybe I can hand up over here. Yes?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the lore book. How do you feel about some of, like, I guess when you read it now before, like, all the story books kind of, how did you feel, like, seeing some certain things that connect the dots later?
You mean, I read the lore book and
like some of the NCPs, like, you find that story off the side and then, like, inside the story, you kind of see it connect a little bit more.
I mean, I'm always making those connections because I'm hugely into lore. But there's very little in the lore book that, like, was revealed in Stormblood. I feel like they wanted to make Stormblood not spoiled, so there's very little. There's all the stuff that's in Stormblood is very, very new. It's stuff we did not know. It's not in the lore book, especially when it comes to the characters. For example, there's almost nothing in the lore book about Doma, and we actually go to Doma and learn about it. You know, so we all basically assume that there's going to be another edition in a couple of years. Like that?
Oh wait.
No? You can go.
I guess. It's just more of a basic lore question. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. But was the fact that the Garleans, ready to be a spoiler?
Oh boy. No, you know what? Next year I'll do a lore panel. I'll do a lore panel.
Okay.
Because if we start talking lore, we're going to be here all night. and you know, for the most part, I want to talk about community stuff. Like my experience. I have a lot of experience having played for so long. When you start a podcast, you become like this community figure, so and like I've met people and I know people and blah 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 blah. So, yes.
What's your preferred platform for voice chat?
Discord. Okay. Discord is a really awesome app, and it's like a clone of Slack, but it's a really nice product, and it makes me really proud that it came up in the FF14 community. Like, if you go to their website, all their screenshots are FF14, and so it's almost like our baby, and I think that's really cool, so use Discord. Fuck everybody else. Yes?
Okay, so you say Discord's a great platform for role-playing, but is there like a website or a forum where...
It's not the main platform for role-playing. It's the main platform for voice chat. Every FC should have a Discord. There's Discords for many, many different purposes. Some are RP, but there's a Discord I'm in for streamers. There's a Discord I'm in for content creators and podcasters. It's just a way to connect people. I have a Discord that's just for NYC FF14 role players, which you should all join. But it's just a communications means. But that's what virtually everybody uses. But you can also it's also a great way to find role players because sometimes in game it's really tough. One thing that they added in one of the Heaven's Word patch cycles was the RP status. You can put a status symbol next to your name that says various things, like looking for party, looking for material meld. Now you can put an RP status next to your name, which is really nice. Not only because it acknowledges RP as a thing that a lot of people do, but it's a way to differentiate between when you are in character or versus when you're not in character. For example, if I want to go to an RP event, but if I'm not open to interaction, maybe I'm just observing, maybe I just don't feel well that day, maybe I just don't feel like talking to people, I don't want to observe, I can keep my status off. But if I have the RP status on, you're basically inviting people to interact with you. And this also can go for the open world, even though it's not as common unless you're on Balmont. But that's a really nice feature that you can add. And actually, now you can also search people by RP status, though I don't know that. I don't know how useful that's gonna be unless you want to do that. What's called walk-ups, which is just, it's as if you were walking up to a stranger on a street. There are places that's not as easy to do unless you are on somewhere that's very, very friendly to RP. And it's nerve-wracking just as it is in real life, but there are situations that could be a way to start an interaction with someone. Like, excuse me, I need help. Okay, are we out of time? Okay, one more question. Anyone have a super burning question? Super burning, but I'm going to be here, so yes. Okay, again, I'm Sakura, aka Lisa Schrader. I'm the co-host of MuseCast 14. We are the only FF14 podcast focusing on roleplay. We're great. We've been around for a year. We just are releasing our 24th episode, and I will be here for as long as you need me. And I definitely check out the podcast, check out the Discord for FF14 players in NYC, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.